All right, Joanne, it's got you muted.
Okay, hi, how are you?
I am doing A-OK. I'm hanging in there.
All right, so you think we've got many people zooming with us today?
I am hopeful. My fingers are crossed. I think so. I can see my picture. Let me brighten my room up a little bit.
Okay.
Use a little natural light, get a little more light in it. That looks a
Oh,
little
yeah,
better.
that's good.
We've been doing a bunch of Zoom meetings, so the natural light from my window helps make my face
Yeah,
look more visible.
I have a real problem with that because this is one of two places I typically sit in, but when I sit by the window, I like have this line down the middle of all bright on that side.
It's tough to figure out what just the right way is, but this kind of works. We've been having a bunch of meetings here, so
Good.
it works. Lots of meetings via Zoom.
Are you in the office or?
I am. So
Okay.
we've still been rotating, coming in and out of the office amongst our staff. So I am in a couple days a week and then work from home a couple days. But today, and for this meeting, I wanted to be at my desk with all my tools. If somebody asks for something,
Yeah.
it's easy for me to write an email and send it tonight instead of taking notes and sending it tomorrow. I figure if I'm at my desk at work, I can respond or at least send all of the emails right now from right here. So nothing has to wait.
So James, how do you do in these meetings? How will we know if somebody wants to talk? Will they use the raise your hand thing, or because you're obviously the host?
Yep. So it's a mix. And for our El Sobrani MAC meetings, we've had about 25 people, which is more than what we normally get.
Wow.
But with that, I'm able to see everyone. So we're going about it kind of the best way that we can. So typically, everyone who calls in and it's just by phone, I will unmute their phones and ask, hey, do you want, does someone who's calling on the phone have a comment? And we wait for, 5-10 seconds. If no one says anything, then we move on with the agenda. For those that I see, I look at people and I tell them, hey, I can see you, wave your hand, know how to press the button and wave your hands and do all that, then go right ahead. But if you don't, just wave your hands at me and I'll catch you. So
okay, so you're kind of handling the comments and things.
As best as I can, I try to. Hi, Joanna. As best as I can, I try to help facilitate that, to sort of take the pressure off the meeting itself. Everybody wants to have comments. Everyone has things to say. So, I want everyone to speak. We'll go for as close to 2 hours as we need to. But I found out that the health officer tonight is actually Dr. Farnatano. I didn't know if it was going to be him. He and some of his associates, they have been very busy participating in these meetings for 4 months now. But him getting Dr. Farnatano himself, most people will recognize his name and face by this point. So it's actually kind of a treat that we're able to get him. The other doctors have been fantastic, but to have the person that people are seeing on TV and whose name everyone's hearing, I think adds a special touch to the information that'll be shared. So he will present, John will talk, and then we have a presentation from the Fire Protection District, and I think Lieutenant Buford, our sheriff, will be on, and that will probably take up most of our 2 hours, especially
since the hiring and all the, okay.
If we get into a back and forth with, not a back and forth, but if there are questions and discussion back and forth with Dr. Farnatano when he presented at the El Sobrani MAC last month, and that was a good chunk of the meeting. People kind of asking him questions back and forth, he and John, sort of tag teaming things. That took up, I'd probably say 30 minutes, maybe 25, 30 minutes.
Hey, James, how do you spell his name?
You would ask me that. I can look it up in my inbox. Hold on.
And he's the county health officer?
He is. So Farnatano is spelled F-A-R.
Okay.
N-I-T.
Uh-huh.
A-N-O.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Hi, Joanna.
Hi there. I'm just sending a quick email to the nurse in our congregation. She might want to join in. And so he's the Contra Costa
County.
health officer.
Yep, he's our health officer. He and the health director have been the two individuals most out front. So, and that's Anna Roth. So Anna Roth and Chris Farnatano are probably names that most folks are familiar with right now.
So we definitely have a quorum, you think, James?
Everyone said that it would work for them. I'll put it like
Okay.
that. Everyone
Okay.
replied that this time frame at this date would work. So I'm hopeful. Good evening, Dr. Farnatano.
And seeing that we're not making any vote determinations or votes or anything, we could just go on anyway, even if there's not a quorum.
Yeah, that is the plan.
Okay, let's see. How do I get back in here? There we are. Okay.
Good evening. Just so everyone is aware, we are recording tonight's meeting. It'll help with me doing the minutes later.
You know, it's a blessing and a curse when I used to do that, because I was a secretary in government and staff meetings, and you really feel like you got to listen.
For sure. It makes a big difference.
We listen to the whole meeting again.
Hey, John. John, unmute yourself.
Aha.
Hi, Lisa. So we've got two
Hey there.
members on.
Am I late? Were we starting at 7:30?
We have a few public members, right?
Yes, we do.
Good.
Got two MAC members and more folks are still logging in.
Great. Laura, I haven't seen you in a while. Good to see you.
Hey, John, how are you?
Good. I see you travel a lot. I know I keep up on Facebook. You travel. Yes.
Not traveling much these days.
Great.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just looking at Italy, though, right before the call on my phone.
Wow. Great.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, it's this challenging time to travel. I know so many people who have canceled their trips, and I know Dr. Farnatano can't do all his trips as our health officer. He's got to stay there, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I had a bunch of travel planned. We had to cancel it all. I had a trip to Antarctica planned. It's not going to happen.
Oh,
Oh, wow.
Wow. Wow.
Wow.
I also was looking at buying a used RV through Cruise America a couple hours ago.
Mhm.
You know, I know one of my neighbors who just moved to the East Coast. They decided to move their stuff. They rented a one of those cruise RVs, Cruise America, and they're using it to get across country.
Oh, cool.
But yeah, they're renting, but you could buy those, right? You could buy those.
Yeah. I just saw one in Canada. I don't want to digress. The meeting's going to start.
Yeah.
But yeah, good.
I was going to ask Lisa how things are going at the school.
I changed jobs.
No, I know you did, but you've been in contact, I thought, with them. Don't you stay in contact with the Crestmont folks?
I mean,
I know you're no longer with Crestmont. Yes.
well, I stayed in touch with them, but then I was at Black Pine Circle in
Right.
Berkeley, but I just moved to a new position in Marin City. So I'm back focused on equity, and I'm really,
Great. Who you working for in Marin City?
it's called Bridge the Gap College Prep.
That's great.
So
Great.
it's a, yeah.
Great.
We've still got more people coming in.
John, I can fill you in on Crestmont. This is Joanna Pace.
Oh, Joanna, hi. Yes.
Hi there. Hi there. I'm the chair of trustees at Open Door United Methodist Church, where
Yeah.
Crestmont rents, and they've been diligent about meeting with all the, studying all the guidelines that you all have been giving them. And
Right.
they have delayed their start of school, and they have, even though they had a reopening plan that was quite thorough, they are going to begin online in, I think, the first week of September.
I see. I figured they'd be doing that virtual. That's right. Yes. Yes.
They had outfitted themselves with lots of tents and things and had very thorough plans to
It's a challenging time for schools, for sure.
vary.
Yeah. Hey, Mike, I like the beard.
How's it going, Tom?
Glad you like it. It's
Looks good.
it's temporary, but I'm enjoying it.
I remember you when you almost couldn't grow a beard.
That was not too long ago. Yeah, 50 plus. Yeah.
So we'll give a few more minutes and let get things kicked off here at 6:35. If anyone doesn't have access to the agenda, in the chat, I sent the web link to it, so you can pull that up if you don't have access to it. But we will. Okay. Joanna, are you okay with us going ahead and starting?
Sure.
Okay.
Okay, so welcome everyone to the East Richmond Heights Municipal Advisory Council meeting of August 13th. Let's see, first on our agenda is called welcome and then the roll call. So I'll take the roll call. Tom Dancy.
I'm here.
Victoria Curtis. Absent. Brenda Williams. Absent. Lisa Rafael.
Here.
Okay, and Joanne Pavlinik, I'm here. So there's 2 vacancies that are not here. So the treasurer's report. James, that's yours?
$3,000.
Okay. And then next on our agenda is the category of presentations. And our first presentation is from Supervisor Joya on a county update and COVID-19 update. Thank you.
Great. Thanks, Joanne. And I'll be followed. I know in the next presentation, our health officer, Dr. Farnatano, is here. So I'll be brief. Let me first start. I'm glad we've been able to get the MAC meeting going again virtually. We've just started this up last month, and you know, just like city councils and boards of supervisors and school boards, we're all meeting virtually and still continuing our business. But we thought it's still important to get the county updates and other things out to the community. So I appreciate the MAC's effort on this. So I'll just make a few comments and take any questions. And actually, what we could do is wait for questions after hearing from Dr. Farnatano, because if any of the questions to me are health related, we can have Dr. Farnatano. If they're not health related, you know, I can answer them. So, you know, you all are aware that the county declared a state of emergency back in March. I should say a public health emergency, and that allowed us to take more actions than we could otherwise take under the law. And it also gave the power to county health officers to enact health orders. And a lot of people don't know about this authority that county health officers have, which they can when the Board of Supervisors declares this emergency. And the Bay Area counties were the first counties in the Bay Area to actually order a shelter at home back on March 16th, and that was followed a few days later by the state executive order, which did the same. You know, we got through the first couple of months. The county health department and many county departments have been on the front line of responding to the pandemic and preparing. You know, we're unique in that we're one of the few counties in the state that actually has its own hospital and clinics, meaning we have a large staff of physicians and nurses. And of course, every county has public health, but they don't all have a health system, or they all don't have a health plan. So that meant that in addition to doing the normal public health work, about 100,000 of the county's 1.1 million residents actually get their health care through the Contra Costa Health Plan. So some of the early things that were done were to work with local hospitals to improve hospital capacity and to set up a couple of overflow health centers in the event our hospitals became overloaded with patients. And we did set up a site in Richmond at, some of you know, the Craneway in the Ford building. That's been set up for 250 beds. It's still there. County is still leasing the space. The good news is we haven't had to use it because hospitals haven't been, have not reached capacity. Although right now, and you may hear more about this from Dr. Farnatano, the ICU capacity is at about 75%. At least it was a day ago. So that's a number that's being watched closely. So, you know, we all in the state got through the first surge in April and May. And then in June, as things began to slowly reopen, due to a number of factors, the transmission spread again. And as of course, we're seeing over the last couple months, higher hospitalization numbers, ICU capacity, all of that compared to where we were back in the spring. And the state also enacted stronger orders and put a number of counties, including ours and the Bay Area counties, on a health watch. So, and Dr. Farnatano will talk about the details on that. I will just reiterate the message we really are putting out is to wear a mask. And I mean, that is among the other important things you can do, one of the most important to really prevent the spread of the virus and to keep control and to keep our ICU capacity from becoming full. In our county, the largest demographic that's been impacted from the virus is our Latinx community. And about 3/4 of the deaths actually have been in congregate care settings in Orinda, Pleasant Hill, Concord, I think the one in Walnut Creek. So deaths there has not been a greater impact on African American and Latinx communities in terms of death. The death numbers have been more spread out, so there hasn't been that same impact. As I said, 3/4 of the deaths have been in congregate care, but the number of cases in the Latinx community has been much larger, and that's been true statewide and true nationally. And the percent of cases in the Latinx communities often double their percent in the population. And a lot of it's because many of those individuals work at frontline jobs, right? And so they are at greater risk. They're service workers. They work out in public, and so they stand a greater chance of being infected. And also more live in larger households where it's harder to self-isolate at home. And so what often happens is multiple people get infected in the same household because of the inability to self-isolate. Although the county, which has leased about 600 hotel rooms around the county, mostly for those who are homeless or live in homeless shelters, what we've done is transferred individuals out of those shelters into these hotels to avoid an outbreak. So we've been pretty successful in avoiding outbreak among shelters and those who are homeless because of that. We have also leased a hotel for people who test positive. So for example, if someone's unable to self-isolate at home, once they're contacted by a contact tracer, they're given the option of that hotel. So we are hoping that maybe more individuals from larger households can take advantage of that so they don't infect other members of their household. Other items, so one of the things we did several months ago was to pass a countywide rent freeze and moratorium on evictions. There was a state moratorium, but it didn't cover, it wasn't as comprehensive, it didn't cover rent freeze. So ours basically applies in all cities unless the city has a stronger ordinance of its own. And so it applies not just the unincorporated areas, but cities as well. So it includes a rent freeze. It includes the current ordinance goes through September 30th. We've been extending it along the way depending on need. And I'm sure in September when we meet, we'll take a look at whether it needs to get extended or not. And then those who show financial hardship have I think it's a 5 months. So October, November, December, January, actually 4 months. So they have doing my math on my fingers. So for those running for school board who are on I know I think there's a couple people running for school board. So I'm counting on my fingers here. So our ordinance goes through September 30th, but people have until January 30th to repay back due rent. This has been a growing problem. And frankly, I've also heard from small landlords, more family-owned businesses that have property, and they're facing challenges as well. We've advocated, counties and cities have advocated for a lot more federal assistance. I think what we've seen is a failure at the federal level, both in terms of a healthcare response and in terms of a financial response. What you're seeing are states and counties really taking action themselves, which is unfortunate that we don't have a federal uniform response, either on developing more test capacity. And you may hear more from Dr. Farnatano. There's been a delay in getting test results because of the shortage of the chemical reagent that's needed. Took me, when I got tested last a few weeks ago, it took me about 9-10 days to get results. That can be running longer now. Although the county public health lab, our own health lab, can turn results around in 48 hours, but that's a small lab, and that's being reserved for first responders, healthcare workers, or outbreaks. Otherwise, the county uses private labs to get test results. And we are increasing our test locations in West County and encourage people, whether or not they have symptoms, to get tested. We want to collect the best data. So we have a test site at the County Health Center in San Pablo. We opened a new test site in North Richmond. We have a test site at Kennedy High, and that's going to get consolidated into a new larger site at the parking lot near the Richmond Auditorium. So that will be a much bigger site. We'll close the Kennedy site. You'll be able to go to that site. And then the state is running the site at the county's Pinole Library in Pinole. So there's ways you can, online or by phone, get tested whether or not you have symptoms. And I know, Tom, we were chatting when you got tested and how long that took, and it's been frustrating. It was the same for me, and Dr. Farnatano can talk more about the dynamics of what's happening and what's being done statewide to try to correct that. So we also, the county has been providing funding to our community-based partners that we have contracts with on health and social services to help them weather this and serve the most vulnerable folks in our community. We set up a hotline for small businesses, although that's been hard because it's been hard to access federal funding. The county has spent probably about $100 million between March and July on responding to the pandemic, and a lot of the efforts both in and outside the county. We're hoping to be reimbursed for most of that with the federal CARES Act dollars, but we'll be spending more in the new fiscal year. As I said earlier, the whole issue of having a response has not been well coordinated, I think, from a federal standpoint. And with regard to the financial side of it, when I referenced our moratorium on evictions, that doesn't address people who, as I said, who may need financial help in addition to relief from rent. So, and with the federal government delaying on extending its unemployment, that's caused been a lot of financial hardship. We're seeing a major caseload increase in our social services department, which handles claims for food stamps, which is CalFresh. So there's we know that the financial hardship will extend well beyond this pandemic. The county's still moving forward now, with its other responsibilities. I know some of you have followed the general plan update, for example. That's still going forward while it's been delayed. We just recently had some budget hearings with the budget scheduled to be adopted in September. For those of you concerned about property tax payments, the county treasurer extended the deadline to pay property taxes for those with a financial hardship, but the governor, by executive order, extended it further through next May. So, and that applies to the last property tax payment as well as the next one coming up later this year. So under the current executive order, folks have until next May. So I'll stop with that, other than just closing with, I want to acknowledge, I mean, Dr. Farnatano, his team, Chief Lon, who's on the call from our Contra Costa Consolidated Fire, their folks. I mean, there's been our social service folks across county government have been amazing at just stepping forward and responding from, I say, folks across all departments, even like Public Works, because they were the ones who helped set up these hotels to work on getting these hotels leased and getting them ready and working to set up a lot of the logistics around some of these care sites. So folks have been working really hard, and I can tell you it's been, I'm really proud of a lot of those public employees across the county that have worked really hard. So with that, if you have any questions, if they're health related, I can answer them with Chris, or Chris may have other answers after his presentation. Yeah, Lisa?
It's not a question, and I don't know if this is the appropriate time to say it, but I'm just going to say it, which is I'm just grateful to you, John, because I feel like in all of the material that comes at us in the mail or the news, or a lot of it through email, to me, you were one of the first elected officials that I saw wearing a mask. And I was just grateful because, like, we know what the science shows that that's the #1 thing, and yet a lot of our elected officials don't always do that. And so I'm just happy every time I see your face come up on my email with your different masks on.
And I've changed the types of masks I wear. Yes, it's true. One of the things we did, with all of this, is the enforcement of all these health orders. It's always, our goal is to always make them educational. We don't want to go out and fine people, right? But we have to be really assertive about education. And we recently did pass administrative fines. There was always an ability to do enforcement under these orders, and really the administrative fines was meant to be easier and more to send a message. I don't think anybody's been fined yet, but for example, if a business is allowing people in without wearing a mask, we want to go in and tell them to stop. If they don't, then they get fined, but it's always a warning first. Or if there's indoor gatherings that shouldn't occur, you're right. And I mean, mask wearing, I can't emphasize, is the single most important thing to do. Yes, social distance, wash your hand, don't go out if you're sick, get tested. All of those things are important, but the people that sometimes testify at our meetings about it's a violation of their constitutional rights to wear a mask. Well, it's a violation of my right also to get sick, and potentially for vulnerable people to die. And unfortunately, there hasn't been the best role model set at the federal level, and there are mixed messages going out, and that contributes to it. I'm glad to say most people in Contra Costa are wearing masks. There's still some that don't. That's an ongoing effort. So, and we've attempted to always try to get information out, right, in a clear, simple way that's understandable, because there's so many conflicting messages out there, and there's so much information coming at us, even with the health order. And I know Dr. Farnatano and his colleagues are looking at really trying to even simplify pictorially or graphically all, when do you have to wear a mask? I mean, bottom line is wear it when you go out and have it with you. And if you're walking, there's people around, put it on. So thanks, Lisa.
Okay, so if you want to move, are there any more questions or comments? Okay, seeing none, if we can move on to you, Dr. Farnatano.
Sure. And this is my mask, and one of the drawbacks of these Zoom meetings is we don't actually get a chance to really model the right behavior. So we're all here, socially isolating on Zoom. But, I definitely echo Supervisor Joya's comments that universal masking wearing is one of the most important things we can do to really, slow the spread of this virus. we are now really in the midst of a second surge. We had a surge of cases that happened in mid-April, and it really was controlled by that first of the nation shelter in place. And we brought our numbers down quite well, but then as Supervisor Joy alluded to, as we started to open things up and people got a little more lax about things, and we saw a lot of social gatherings, we started to see higher cases, and we've seen higher community level spread in the second wave and higher hospitalization levels in the second wave than we did at the first. One of the challenges we're facing right now is around the data issues. And most of you may know that the state of California, it has experienced this data problem through this database called CalReady. So all labs that perform COVID testing on anyone who lives in California, they report the results, both positives and negatives, into the state system. And the state system was experiencing problems. In retrospect, it started probably at least back in July 25th, if not further back. And for a while, we were not getting all the results. So to be able to understand, were cases going up or down? Was our test positivity rate going up or down? We had a real challenge in understanding that. And so getting a sense of where we're headed on the epidemic curve and the spread in our community was a real challenge. Now, through all this state data issue, the labs are still reporting their results to the doctor or the clinic or the test site that performed the test. So there was not a lack of information getting that way. But what was lacking was the gap in the information getting to local and state public health teams. So that caused two problems. One is we didn't get accurate numbers, and two, those cases that needed to be investigated by our case investigation and contact tracing teams, we weren't getting the information on a lot of those cases. Now the state says it's now confident it's resolved the data issue. We've been working through the backlog of these new cases that have come through the system. We're still doing a lot of double checking internally to make sure that the issue really is resolved. We're still seeing a question about whether we're getting all the results from the Kaiser lab. Kaiser's a big care provider in the East Bay, and so they do a lot of testing, and we've seen some gaps in their testing, and we're trying to figure out, if we still have got complete test results from all the Kaiser patients. So we're still working on that. We think the majority of the data we have there, but we're still not totally convinced we have 100%. But our data teams are working with Kaiser and working with the state to make sure we're double checking information we're getting directly from Kaiser to make sure, and we're hopeful we can have confidence back in that we have a complete look at all the data in the next day or two. Now, given that issue about the data, what we are seeing now with most of this backlog cleared up is that it seems that our cases and our case positivity rates may have plateaued in late July. It may even be starting to come down, but it's a little, again, preliminary. We certainly have seen our hospital cases, which is reported through a separate system, was not affected by this kind of peak in the previous week. When we look at the data in West County, we've seen a continued kind of hotspot in West County with COVID. So for Richmond, in the last 14 days, there were 574 new cases. Now, some of those, because of this backlog issue, they may have been tests performed before the last 14 days, but those are ones that got reported within the last 14 days. So that's quite a lot of cases in Richmond. In addition to that, there were 249 new cases in San Pablo, 32 in El Sobrante, and 15 in El Cerrito, your other neighbors. And we have seen that per capita, San Pablo has had one of the highest rates, and you know, Richmond also has had a very high rate, and it's a theme we've seen across the county, across the state, that lower income communities that have a lot of frontline workers, are more diverse communities with a high percentage of Latinx residents, are seeing the highest cases. And you know, it's probably a combination of, you know, workplace situations of working in crowded work areas, as well as large families, as well as we're also, you know, seeing spread in social gatherings and family get-togethers. And we you know, seem to have seen, you know, those type of patterns really. We can attribute the rise in cases that kind of started slowly in June and then kind of gathered speed in early July, that we're seeing, you know, cases in these communities, and cases that seem to be linked to social gatherings, family get-togethers, backyard barbecues, things like that. And if we are really seeing an improvement, it may be due to some of the messaging getting out that, you know, with the states putting out their universal masking order, and the state putting on additional restrictions in the second week of July on indoor activities, closing indoor worship services, in monitoring counties, closing indoor restaurants, although we hadn't yet opened indoor restaurants in our county, closing non-essential indoor work offices, things like that. So I think it was a combination of actually limiting those activities, but even more so just the messaging that we were really headed in the wrong direction, and everyone in the community really needed to take seriously the advice to wear masks, to avoid unnecessary get-togethers. So hopefully that you know, encouraging trend, which we think we're seeing in this data over the last couple of weeks, will continue. You know, back to the hospitalizations. So we peaked in our county. We had I think 44 patients in the hospital at our highest day in April, before it came down to around 10 to 12 by the 1st of June. Then we saw a steady rise in June and July, and at our peak, we had about 110 patients in Contra Costa County hospitals. This last week, we've been back down in the 90s, so hopefully that trend will continue. Now that those 95, as of the count today, people in Contra Costa County hospitals, about 10 of those are residents outside the county, and then there's also about 8 Contra Costa County residents that we know of who are hospitalized in Alameda County. And as I'm sure you all know, that most residents of West County get their care either at Kaiser Richmond, and they transfer their COVID patients to Kaiser Oakland, or they get their care directly from an Alameda County hospital. So a lot of those West County residents who have to be hospitalized with COVID wind up being hospitalized in Alameda County. So we are trying to track our residents in Alameda County on a regular basis, and we're working with the hospitals there to kind of get a regular electronic reporting. So again, the highest community transmission we're seeing in our most diverse communities, higher rates in our African American and Latinx and Pacific Islander communities. And we're also seeing a shift towards younger people, the young working age population, especially the folks in their 20s and 30s and 40s. We're seeing the bulk of the cases. And that, again, probably reflects both workplace exposures as well as increased social interactions and social exposures. we have actually created a new youth ambassador program. This is a partnership with the Contra Costa Regional Health Foundation, and we're also working with the city of San Pablo and the County Office of Education. The point of this youth ambassador program is to get the word out to young people about and working through social media and other things. And my generation, we think of social media as Facebook, but the younger generation uses TikTok and lots of other things and knows much better how to get messages to go viral. So really looking at partnering with youth to really get the message out to their cohorts. And we really want to, send a message about, how to protect themselves, how to protect their families, and get that message out before Labor Day, because we definitely have seen, surges after other big holidays, after the 4th of July, after Memorial Day, after Father's Day. So we're really concerned about, we don't want to repeat that Labor Day coming up and have everyone go back to having family get-togethers where COVID gets spread again. As John mentioned, we're adding more test sites in West County, including the test site at the North Richmond Health Center, and which just opened this past week, and the test site at the Richmond Civic Center, which we're hoping to open in the next couple of weeks. And so we really are pushing for more people to get tested, especially folks who are out in the community more because of their work, or if they're the ones in their family that's doing the shopping, or if they are otherwise being exposed, or if they're, they live with someone who, or work with someone who's an elderly. We actually move very quickly to require nursing homes and elder care facilities for the elderly, assisted living facilities for the elderly, to do mandatory testing of their staff and residents. And we took this move before. The state is now requiring that of nursing homes, but we've extended it to the assisted living facilities as well. And though we're detecting a lot of outbreaks in these facilities, most of these outbreaks are much smaller size because we're picking them up when there's 1 or 2 cases rather than dozens. And I think it's really making a difference in protecting the elderly from spread within these facilities. We have, as John mentioned, seen a big lag in testing turnaround from our commercial labs. And so we've increased the capacity of our county-run public health lab, as well as we're now partnering with a series of additional labs that are promising 2 to 3 day turnaround time, including 2 that we got approved contracts for last week. And so we're hoping in very short order to be able to get all of our test turnaround times down to a few days, not just the most urgent ones, which we're running through our public health lab. We also have developed a checklist for elementary school waivers. So the state of California has said that counties that are on the monitoring list should not have in-person classroom education until they're off the monitoring list for at least 2 weeks. We are a county that's on the monitoring list because of our high case rates. But the state has said that elementary schools, based on the fact that younger children may be at lower risk for spreading the virus, could apply for waivers if they have the support of the administration, the teachers, and the parents, and the local health department to start in-person education even before they're fully off the monitoring list. So we developed a checklist, and as soon as we are clear that our case rates and our testing rates and our hospital rates are stable or decreasing for a couple of weeks, we will be starting to accept the waivers. But the checklist is there for the schools to begin preparing their waiver applications. And we may meet those criteria if the data, if we can get confidence in the data coming from the state. We may reach that criteria and start accepting school waivers as soon as next week. Finally, just to again emphasize, the most important message, even though there's some glimmers that we may be starting to stabilize or even decrease in our case rates, we're still at a very high level, much higher than we were in April. And so we need to continue to decrease these case rates. And the most important thing is really universal masking whenever you're around anyone who's not from your household, and minimizing the amount of social interaction, avoiding social gatherings. The most high-risk things are indoor gatherings and gatherings where people aren't wearing masks. So if you're eating and drinking, you're not wearing a mask, and so that puts those kind of situations, at very high risk. So trying to, the more the public can minimize those kind of activities, the more we can interrupt spread, and the more we can get our numbers down so that schools can open and open safe way, in a safe way that's safe for the students' families, and the teachers. So then open up for any questions anyone has.
I want to thank Dr. Francano and John Gioia for being here. It's really, we're honored to have you both here tonight to give us this information. So if anyone has any questions or comments, if you could just kind of raise your hand, or James, if you get any on the phone, let us know.
Yep. Go. So Miss Sojourner, I see you. Go ahead and ask your question, ma'am.
Oh, thank you. I'm wondering, when we look at the county website for statistics on cases, where does East Richmond Heights and other unincorporated areas show up?
Good question.
The way we attribute cases is through how they're done through the state CalReady system. And so, and generally, so unincorporated areas of a city like East Richmond Heights would be counted in the Richmond statistics. Similar with San Pablo, there's some unincorporated areas that have an address as San Pablo, and those would also be counted in the San Pablo statistics.
Thank you.
So, Chris, just an additional point. I know this has come up with the neighboring community, Kensington. It doesn't show any cases in Kensington, although we know, I think you verified, there were a handful, like 3 or 4, so I wanted to actually get one point clarified. When under the case list, if the cases are under 11 in a jurisdiction, are you not listing them? Because for deaths, remember, we're listing all deaths even below 11. Is that not the case for the cases?
Yeah, I believe you're correct. So, there's some guidelines about statistics and protection of privacy that the State Department of Public Health has. And they generally recommend for most things, not displaying small numbers less than 10. Deaths become a matter of public record. Death certificates become public, so there is not as much of a privacy concern there. But for cases, we aren't displaying the numbers in cities when they're below 10.
Can we take a look at that issue for cases, if we can get past that, just like the statistical analysis that was done for deaths? Because I think there's an interest in seeing, even when the case rate is under 10, to show that by community.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think our data team's still kind of looking at way they can, there's other ways to look at things and see if, based on the size of the community and the numbers, if there's ways you can display, sometimes display numbers less than 10.
You know, there's a question that came up in the chat that I think would be useful maybe for the health officer to sort of, because it's exemplary of other things. It's really about someone saying they went to a car wash, the worker leaned into the car without a mask, they called the police to file a report, they were referred to the health department who referred them back to the police. So why don't you maybe talk about, Dr. Farnatano, how people should handle that?
So generally kind of think of the health orders in terms of what businesses are supposed to do and what individuals are supposed to do. So generally, if there's a concern about a business not following the health order, you know, in their practice of their employees or what they're allowing their patrons to do within the business, then that should be referred to the district attorney has a consumer complaint line, and you can email or call and voice a complaint, and they have a team there that investigates the businesses. They'll pay the business a visit. They'll make their own observations. Again, they'll start with an educational approach, you know, if the business is continuing to refuse to comply, then they can take additional steps. For individuals, if there was, you know, say a group gathering in a park or some other type of thing that was really regarding individuals and not businesses, that's usually, you know, referred to local law enforcement. So, you know, call your local law enforcement, their non-emergency line, to make that complaint. In addition, we have our, you know, different code agencies like our environmental health. They do inspections on pools and restaurants. So they'll, you know, in their normal course of business, as they're going out to inspect kitchens to make sure they're sanitary and doing everything to prevent foodborne illness. They'll also make observations of the requirements of restaurants and make sure that the tables are, you know, patrons are sitting 6 feet apart from tables, and all the employees are wearing masks, and the patrons are wearing masks except when they're actually eating and drinking. So our building inspectors will also play a role. So we've got other agencies that are, you know, kind of in the job of inspecting businesses. They're also kind of looking at the health orders and the compliance of the businesses with the health orders.
Anyone else with a comment or question? I do have a question. Now, I hear about tests that have faster turnaround times. Is there any chance for that in the near future? Do you know about any that are coming out that are effective?
Yeah, there's one test that's been out for a while. It's called the Abbott ID Now. It's a test that's similar to most of the tests we're doing, which are called PCR tests, polymerase chain reaction tests. They're basically looking at the DNA of the virus, and they have this amplification process where they can really detect very tiny levels of virus, and it's very accurate. So it's very, you know, most of these tests, those are the standard tests we do, very, very, very accurate. This Abbott ID Now is a quick test. I think it's one of the tests the White House does when they're testing visitors. It's not, there's been some concerns about not quite as accurate as the tests that take, you know, several hours or a day or two to get the results back. But they're pretty good, but they're very labor intensive, and they're not made for high volume. So for example, our county hospital, we can run about 10 of those tests a day. And so we're saving them for like a woman who comes in labor who's got a fever, where we need to really get the result right away, or, you know, someone coming in for an emergency surgery and they need to get the result right away. Now there's another kind of test that's coming around. There's a couple of them that have been approved, and those are called antigen tests. So they measure proteins of the virus, and those antigen tests are a lot quicker. They don't have to be run in a formal lab. They can be run in a clinic or at a testing site, and you can get results in 30 to 60 minutes. The problem with these tests is they're not quite as sensitive. They don't have that amplification technology to be able to pick up a very tiny signal. So they're only approved for people who have symptoms, and only in the first 5 days of symptoms when their virus levels are very high. When tested in that group, they're pretty good. They're about 97%. At least one of them is 97% accurate in that population. That was the one the Ohio governor tested positive at. His was unusual because he had a falsely positive test, and then he had one of the PCR tests and it came back negative. Usually the problem with these tests are false negatives, where somebody has COVID, but their test says they don't. And that's why it's really limited to those people who have symptoms, who probably have high virus levels. So the big advantage, again, is the fast. You could get a test result while you wait, instead of waiting several days where some of our labs are backed up with the other test. So we're trying to get some of those machines. Everybody's trying to get some of those machines. They're in really short supply. And again, we have a failure of a national testing strategy, just like we had a failure of a national personal protective equipment distribution strategy. And so everybody's kind of fighting with each other to try to get a hold of these machines. But if we can get some of them, we'd like to put them in place and test the people who are coming in with symptoms, so they can get their result right away and know whether they need to isolate right away. And that can make a big difference in, breaking the chains of transmission.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from anyone?
Yeah,
John Sargent?
Hi.
You next.
Thank you. John, you just set out this thing about health order violations to be reported to the DA's office. Yeah. But here in East Richmond Heights, we have got a lot of neighbors. They're on, especially on next door, saying you got to call the sheriff. I know when Joe's up to give his report, maybe we'll find out where that's at. But that's not what people I think are doing. And so is this now the correct information for us in Contra Costa County? This is what we should be reporting those violations to. And a lot of it on next door is very excessive. You might be aware of it. People are saying, call the sheriff. And so,
well, yeah, this question. So here's sort of under the administrative order that the Board of Supervisors adopted. It basically says that the enforcement of the order, so I'm going to sort of explain it and then talk about why we have a central number, but what the options are, that the enforcement of the order can occur by law enforcement, or a code enforcement officer, or like an environmental health officer. For cities, the city can designate, the city council or city manager can designate the department or entity within city government that is responsible for issuing any administrative fines and enforcing it. So that could be a city police department, a city code enforcement officer. And so that's generally how that works, because the county can't enforce this alone, right? It has to be in conjunction with cities. And in the unincorporated area, of course, there's the sheriff's office, there is our code enforcement officers, and our environmental health officers typically work countywide in cities and unincorporated areas, and they've been the interface with restaurants. However, there was this question for, can we centralize a number if people were wanted one number? So the district attorney's office has an attorney there who previously was working in the fraud unit, who is handling and I think centralizing a lot. And Dr. Farnatono can add on to this, but and the sheriff's office as well. There's nothing that prevents, if you live in a city, so I'm trying to speak generally, and then I'll talk about East Richmond. If you live in a city, The city's supposed to designate, so there's nothing that prevents you from calling that designated entity, which may be the police department. Doesn't mean you can't also call the district attorney's office. So in a sense, there are various options. And Chris, if you wanted to add, since I know it's been your team trying to also centralize, what's your thought on that? I mean, we set up the district attorney line, again, to centralize, but it doesn't mean you can't call other entities that are involved with enforcement. Chris, did you want to add something?
Yeah, no, I would agree. And the district attorney, they work with these other entities and they kind of partner with them. So if they get a complaint, they may check in with the city and say, are you guys aware of this? Are you working on this already? The district attorney also, communicates with me as well, just to help, clarify, interpreting the health order. Is this really allowed? Does this sound like they're in violation or not? We kind of have set it up as sort of a no wrong door kind of approach that, you can reach out to the city, you can reach out to local law enforcement, or you can reach out to the DA's office, and they'll kind of send it, forward it to who can best address it. But generally, kind of as a simple rule, think about businesses at the, at the district attorney's office, and for, individuals or groups that aren't affiliated with a business, then think about local law enforcement.
And one of the things we've tried to do is understanding that law enforcement has a lot of things to do. We're not trying to criminalize somebody's, a failure to follow the health order. That's the purpose of the administrative fines, which is why also we've been trying to have code enforcement officers be available, or environmental health officers. Mm-hmm. So I don't know if Lieutenant Buford has anything to add about sort of how the sheriff's department's been handling it for the unincorporated areas.
Good evening, Supervisor.
He's up next on the agenda, so he might cover that.
Maybe just answer the question here, just on this, that would be helpful.
Yes, sir. So with the sheriff's office approach right now, we've gotten only a few calls, but where we are in the education mode. And just like the supervisor said, that we're waiting on the actual code, the administrative code. So we get that and we go into the enforcement part of it. We will be doing exactly what the supervisor said and the doctor said, and we'll be probably citing based on individuals as far as what the fines will look like. So that's where we are right now. But right now, we've had maybe down in the El Serrano area, 1 or 2 businesses that were in violation, and we went in and educated them on it, and they actually closed within the first, next 5 to 10, 15 minutes, they were closed and they left.
That was the bar. That was the bar. I remember that. Yes.
That was the bar, sir. And then we had a nail salon that we got down on the dam road also. As far as individuals, we really haven't had too many calls for the individual violations. Now, I do know that our dispatch center is going to be working with the DA's office and probably code enforcement in some near future to either route the calls to us or to send the calls to the proper channel for the administrative process, as the supervisor mentioned earlier. So I know that that's in the work and should be coming down soon.
So basically, Tom, there's not a wrong door, and so we put out this because this is what we publicize countywide. Whether you live in a city or an unincorporated area, if you have a question and a doubt, you can call the DA's office. But there's nothing that prevents folks from East Richmond from calling the sheriff's department, or in Richmond from calling Richmond Police Department.
John, could you give us the district attorney's number again? I saw it flash on the screen, but
I put it in the chat.
Okay.
In the chat. So anyone wants, it's in the chat. There's an email and a phone number.
Thank you. Okay, Tom, do you have a comment or a question?
Yeah, I had a question for Dr. Farnetano. Doctor, can you comment on any updates the County Health Department has received on the progress on any of the trials that have been going on, either for vaccines or for antivirals? I know that UC Berkeley has a pretty extensive study going on. UCSF was recently in the news for develop. that must be Scout.
That's Scout.
That's Scout. UCSF was recently in the news for developing a nasal spray that could potentially help prevent transmission. If there's any details you'd be able to share with folks on this meeting, it'd be really helpful.
Sure. The two medications that have been approved by the FDA and that have shown, through good studies that they are beneficial. One is remdesivir. It's been in short supply, but the supply is increasing. And that was shown to shorten hospital stays by about 3 days. Question about whether it helped mortality or not. I think we're waiting some more studies to know that for sure. The other was dexamethasone, which is a steroid. It's like prednisone, and that was shown to decrease mortality in people who were either moderately or severely ill in the hospital. That's fortunately a generic drug that's widely available. So those, talking to my hospital colleagues who are treating COVID patients in the hospital and the ICUs, they're using those medications pretty regularly. There's something that's being studied a lot, and both in clinical trials and through something called compassionate use access, is this therapeutic plasma or convalescent plasma. So it's antibodies taken from the blood of people who've recovered from COVID and have COVID antibodies, and they're given to people who are very sick in the hospital. There's still not a lot of good studies out yet as to whether it works or not. A lot of people are using it, but it's still not really clear how beneficial or not it is. As far as other therapeutics, I'm not aware of anything that's really getting close to really being approved with kind of good evidence of real benefit at this time. As far as the vaccines go, there are several vaccines now that are on what they call phase 3 trials, clinical trials. So usually with drugs or vaccines, you start with a phase 1 trial, is just a handful of people just to make sure it doesn't have serious side effects, is safe to use. You do a phase 2 trial to get more information, sometimes find out what's the best dose, get a better sense of side effects, get a little bit of maybe a suggestion that it might be effective. But the phase 3 trials is where you use thousands of people and you do it randomized, double blind. So, half the people get the drug or the vaccine, half the people get a placebo, and then you follow them and see whether it works or not. So there's 2 or 3 vaccines that are in that phase 3. It's going to take, several months before we know whether any of them work, because ethically you can't give somebody a vaccine trial and then purposely infect them with COVID to see if it works or not. So all you have to do is wait to see if people wind up getting exposed through their normal activities, and so that takes some time to have enough people exposed to really see a difference between the placebo and the vaccine. Trials are really just getting started, and it's going to be several months before we really see any kind of benefit. Russia was really criticized by supposedly approving a vaccine, really hasn't been tested. So that's not the way things are usually done. It was really seen more as a publicity stunt, and there hasn't really been any studies on that vaccine. So we are still really the rest of the world is really still several months away from a vaccine. And then even once a vaccine's approved, it's really got to be manufactured. We're going to need millions of doses to get out to the public. Now, fortunately, a lot of these companies have been paid by the federal government to already start ramping up production even before we know whether the vaccine works or not. So hopefully one of these bets will pay off, or several of these bets will pay off. But again, it's still a few months away.
Anyone else with a question, comment? Okay, well, there's no other comments or questions. Thank you so much, Dr. Farnetano, and Supervisor Joya for being with us and for your presentations.
You're welcome.
And we'll move on to the next presentation, the Sheriff's Office. Lieutenant Buford.
Like I said, hello everyone. Lieutenant Buford, Sheriff's Office Base Station. For the month of July, East Richmond Heights, the criminal activity, non-criminal activity is relatively stable and slow. It's really not, has been a lot of, really no crime against persons too much up there. And property crime is actually down up there. I'm working on getting a call for service monthly roll-up so I can distribute that to the board, which will actually show you all of the calls for service within a monthly period. Right now, I don't have it. I just normally go through a police blotter to check the daily 24-hour period of East Richmond Heights. And over the last week, 2 weeks, there's really been, we haven't really had a lot of calls up there for a lot of nothing. So that's really a good thing that it's really been stable, and the community has actually been very quiet, to be honest with you. It's not, and with that being said, because it's been really stable and been really, really quiet, there's really not a whole lot to report. The other thing that I was going to report is what the supervisor already touched on, and that was the COVID response, as you know, to COVID complaints, i.e. the enforcement and the educational piece of it. So I've already covered that. So what I really do like to do is just open it up to the board first for any questions, and then to the residents of the community.
Okay, do any of the council members have questions or comments? Any neighbors? That's Laura. Oh, you're not, okay, great.
Hi there. So years ago, there was, I believe it was a parcel tax that we voted on to try to get our own sheriff up here in East Richmond Heights, and it didn't pass at the time. I'm concerned about safety. I'm glad to hear that there hasn't been a lot of incidents lately in this area, but I do want to revisit the idea of getting our own sheriff.
And I do understand it. I think that if the supervisor is still with us, he'd be more in tune to take that question than I would at this point.
Yeah, Laura, you know, there was some discussion with this MAC. When were we having that discussion? Late last year.
Yeah, that's about right.
And we were talking about whether it should be combined with the El Sobrante MAC area, because it would be less expensive if it was combined with El Sobrante. And we were talking about it. And then, of course, COVID hit. And so I think that sort of, I have to say, sort of stopped the discussion and the effort. So that doesn't prevent us from revisiting it again for a future election cycle. But we were going to talk about whether to put it on for this November. So, and the most recent discussions, as I recall, really focused around getting El Sobrante and East Richmond together, because East Richmond's such a small area, right? The cost per parcel would be more expensive, but if it was combined with El Sobrante and it covered El Sobrante and East Richmond, it would be cheaper per parcel and maybe easier to pass because it needs a 2/3 vote. Because El Sobrante tried the same thing as well, and it didn't pass. So I think we'll maybe we can raise this again with the MAC to have discussion about it.
Sure. A quick question about that. Would it be one sheriff shared between El Sobrante and East Richmond Heights?
Yes, it would be one. It would be on top of existing staffing, so it wouldn't replace the existing staffing. And as Lieutenant Buford can talk about, East Richmond Heights is shared as part of a larger beat. So they get one full-time 24/7 deputy shared with other areas, and Lieutenant Buford can explain that. El Sobrante is its own beat because it's a larger area, so it has one post position, or it's a 24/7 position. This resident deputy would be like a 40-hour-a-week position. It wouldn't be 24/7, and it would be focused on needs of the community. But yes, it would be then shared between, if we did it with El Sobrante, it would be shared with El Sobrante. If we did it with just East Richmond alone, it could be just East Richmond, but it would be much more expensive.
Okay. So when should we bring this up again?
You know, I think we should get past, obviously, this fall, this winter, and the election season in November, and maybe put it back on the agenda for 2021. Because we could do, it could be a mail ballot. Obviously, it's not a poll. It means you can hold these elections anytime. There's certain dates during the year, so there's nothing that prevents it from being held as a mail ballot in an odd numbered year. In fact, I should say on this election issue, thinking about it for this November, our elections officer, our county clerk, is working on a plan to have, in addition to getting mail ballots, to have ballot drop-off and early voting centers. A lot of how many will depend upon what the state will require. You know, in recent elections, you could drop off a ballot at El Cerrito City Hall. I think I've been advocating for more early voting opportunities that are safe for certain locations, like going into El Cerrito City Hall during the week if someone wanted to drop off a ballot or something like that, or if they lost their ballot to pick one up. So we'll see how many locations there will be soon, hopefully when the plan is presented. But so I did want to add that. But so we can take the issue up in 2021.
Thank you.
And Laura, just to reiterate what the supervisor said, he's absolutely correct in the deployment ratio of how the deputy sheriffs work and how they would be assigned.
Lieutenant Buford, can you just, maybe for everyone's knowledge, what are the other areas that East Richmond Heights shares in their beat?
Yes, okay. So the deputy that's assigned to East Richmond Heights is considered beat 4. And in beat 4, that deputy has East Richmond Heights. Then he must travel down. He has the Rolling Wood area, which is in San Pablo, unincorporated. Then he also has, he or she has North Richmond. So as you see, it's a pretty wide area for that deputy sheriff to travel from North Richmond all the way up to East Richmond Heights, especially in congested times.
Okay, thank you.
But they did shortcuts, so they get up there pretty quick.
Thank you. Anyone else with a question or comment for Lieutenant Buford? Okay, well, thank you so much for your report and your responses. Oh, Joanna, you have a question? Okay. So next on our presentations is the Fire Protection District. We have
Chief Lon Gage.
Oh, Lon, okay.
Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Thank you for the opportunity to present to you tonight. Well, first off, I just want to say thank you to Supervisor Joya for the recognition for Con Fire. Everyone has been working very hard, and we appreciate the support from the Board of Supervisors level, so thank you. Through the magic of Zoom, we're going to try to present, do a short presentation for you tonight. So I'm going to share my screen, and hopefully everybody out there will be able to see the presentation as we bring it up. All right, so does everybody see Contra Costa County Fire Protection District?
Sure do.
Yes.
Okay, great. It worked again. Awesome. So again, thank you for the opportunity to present tonight. My name is Lon Gage. I'm Assistant Fire Chief with Contra Costa County Fire. My current assignment is I run our Training and Safety Division. I've been with Con Fire for 20 years. I've been in the fire service for 32 years. I've worked through the ranks of Contra Costa Fire. I have West County in my blood. I started in West County, worked firefighter, engineer, captain, battalion chief, and really enjoyed my time in West County. So I consider it a privilege to present to you tonight. Our fire district is a full service organization. We provide fire suppression, advanced life support, emergency medical services, technical rescue, hazardous materials response, marine response, helicopters response. We dispatch for the majority of the county. We also oversee our 911 ambulance transport system in a public-private partnership with AMR. And we have a full-service fire prevention shop that provides investigations and public education. We're proud to serve one of the most diverse counties in the state. We provide fire and emergency medical services to over 1 million people across Contra Costa County in our 304 square mile fire district. Through mutual aid in and around the county, we provide services to 20 cities and many of the unincorporated areas throughout the county. We have 26 fire stations in Confire. We've got 28 companies, and we have more than 400 staff. Of course, I mentioned earlier, our civilian leadership and guidance comes from the County Board of Supervisors. They meet specifically on fire district issues at least once a month and provide important guidance and leadership and support for our mission to protect the public. We also have a advisory fire commission that's comprised of citizens from each supervisorial district that are pretty much the link between the community, the Board of Supervisors, and the fire district. East Richmond Heights, as everyone knows, West County is a interesting area with a lot of intersecting boundaries of agencies having jurisdiction. So in Western Contra Costa County, we actually have 2 fire stations at Confire, Station 69 on Appian Way in El Sobrani, and Fire Station 70 that's currently on San Pablo Avenue across the street from the former City Hall. Soon we'll be moving to 23rd and Market in San Pablo and moving into a new fire station. We provide and participate in automatic aid with all the fire departments in West County. Most of the direct services that the residents of East Richmond Heights receive is through automatic aid through the Richmond Fire Department and the El Cerrito Fire Department. So you get responses from Station 66 off of Clinton Avenue in Richmond, and you get responses from Engine 72 on the Arlington, depending on where the location of the incident is. But the area of East Richmond Heights is in our fire district and receives all the services that I highlighted earlier. I'm going to talk about a few issues tonight, but I got to talk about one that is not in my presentation, and that's the critical heat that we're going to be confronting here in the next few days. I just want to reach out to everyone to say, be safe, perform your activities early in the morning, hydrate, and most importantly, reach out to your neighbors, especially elderly neighbors that may not have air conditioning, which many homes in West County do not have air conditioning. I sent a list of cooling centers that are available throughout the county to James. So if you want a list of those locations, just reach out to James and he'll provide them for you. But a very dangerous few days, and really as a society, we're confronting a number of issues. Of course, the coronavirus pandemic response is affecting everyone, and that includes your fire department. So Confire is focused on maintaining our critical public safety mission by maintaining the health and the resilience of our most important resource, and that's our people. We have an excellent medical director who is backed up by one of our nurses that are 24/7 keeping the organization healthy. They provide a lot of good support and input to the organization, and we have suffered a relative low number of issues in terms of coronavirus cases and exposures within our organization. So Dr. Benson and his team adjust and improve our response and safety procedures sometimes on a weekly basis, and we utilize the best personal protective equipment we can get our hands on. We're updating and adhering to our continuity of operations plan to make sure we can continue to provide the critical services that we're charged with providing. We also have been in support of the County Emergency Operations Center and coordinating the response of all the county fire agencies to work through this challenge. Currently, because we're humans and humans become complacent, firefighters are no different. So we're currently conducting a district-wide safety stand down to focus on limiting the spread of coronavirus, reinforcing what Dr. Fiorentano and Supervisor Joya was talking about earlier. Wear your mask, stay within your social bubble, maintain physical distance. Please help us help you and follow those health orders so we can all survive through this pandemic. I just want to check to make sure I'm not talking to an empty screen. Are you still there?
We're still here.
Excellent, thank you. So one of the other challenges that we face this time of year is the threat of wildland fire. Contra Costa County in general, and specifically East Richmond Heights, is made up of what we call an urban wildland interface. And these areas face a significant wildfire threat. If you look at the map on the presentation, you can see that the area is solid red pretty much through Berkeley, El Cerrito, Kensington, East Richmond Heights, moving into San Pablo and El Sobrante. And, West County has some of the best weather in the county. Unfortunately, it also has some of the heaviest fuel loading throughout the county. So while we enjoy relative lower temperatures compared to the rest of the county, the fuel loading is heavy, and the medium and heavy fuels that are throughout the West County Hills area are a real threat in terms of wildland fire, especially when we get weather conditions that move from our normal coastal influences to north wind events, which we tend to experience throughout the summer. So as you know, the whole area is very densely populated. There's a significant amount of vegetation and hilly terrain, road systems that are not really designed to move a lot of traffic. Fully 2/3 of Contra Costa County actually is in some level of fire hazard severity zone. East Richmond Heights happens to be in a very high fire hazard safety zone. Our community is very similar in terms of the North Bay. So when you think about the North Bay fires that affected Napa and Sonoma County, there's a lot of parallels there between our communities. Our wildland season just seems to be getting longer and longer. Fire season starts earlier, lasts longer, and that's pretty much the new normal that we confront. This season promises to be no different than in the previous couple of years. The rains that we had were enough to grow a big grass crop, but unfortunately didn't provide enough moisture to the medium fuels and the heavy fuels to protect us this summer. Wildland firefighting and command is kind of my specialty. And right now our medium fuels in Contra Costa County are below 50% live fuel moisture, which may sound like a lot, but that's actually very critically low for live wildland fuels. It's actually the levels of moisture that you would normally see in October or November, and we've got a long ways to go until we get there. So that means we're just going to be at a higher risk as we move through fire season. And unfortunately, I just had a presentation from a meteorologist that says that they don't think that our rains are going to come early this year. So we may not see rain until well after October, which is unfortunate. This does set the stage for a long and challenging fire season. The 2020 fire season will be very dangerous. A good example of what can happen is last year on October 27th, we experienced a wind-driven wildland fire siege that lasted nearly 24 hours. The north winds came up and caused a number of fires throughout the county. We had sustained winds, we had gusts up to 75 miles an hour, and that led to an unprecedented near continuous series of 8 wildland fires throughout that time period. And during that same time period, we had a major commercial structure fire in downtown Walnut Creek and a mass casualty event that affected the city of Martinez. We instituted a entire callback of Contra Costa County fires. So we essentially doubled the number of firefighters that we would normally have on duty and staffed everything that moved to be able to respond to all of those incidents during that time period. Each of the fires that we responded to represented an exceptional danger to life and property. We were fortunate that the major damage to property involved a commercial structure in the city of Lafayette, but otherwise we did not lose any residential structures, and we did not have any significant injuries or loss of life for the public, which I'm thankful for. This incident actually occurred during a public safety power shutoff. which is another challenge that all of us face during these types of weather events. The graph in the corner of the screen just kind of compares a year to year and shows what our normal call volume would be on an October 28th in 2018, which is about 350 calls a day. And in October of 2019, we peaked well above 700 calls in a 24-hour period. It was incredibly busy. We were talking about public safety power shutoffs earlier. We're going to continue to see these public safety power shutoffs. What the reason behind these are basically PG&E is implementing these precautionary measures to shut down the power to reduce the risk of wildfire. So when extreme fire conditions threaten electrical systems, it necessitates them to shut down the power in certain areas to avoid power line caused fires. It's necessary for everyone to be prepared this time of year. The power shutoffs could last in excess of 48 hours. They present unique challenges for both residents and us alike. So we just need to be ready for these events. PG&E has been working to improve their systems. They're committed to providing earlier warning notification and alerts before shutting off the fire, providing ongoing updates, preventing those safety inspections of the lines affected as soon as possible so they can restore power as soon as possible. The fire district is committed towards working towards a safer West County. Really, really important improvement for Con Fire and the whole area of West County, and particularly the city of San Pablo, is we're building a new fire station. Fire Station 70 is becoming a reality. The construction is progressing well. We expect the station will be done in 2021. When we open Fire Station 70, we're actually going to upgrade one of the 2 units that's assigned to Station 70 to a truck company, which means we'll have a much better ability to respond to structure fires and also emergency medical services calls, rescue calls, by having another truck in West County, which is a necessary resource, and we're looking forward to be able to provide more service to the region. We're committed to improvements throughout the organization to better serve our communities. We're focused on fire prevention. This time of year, our Fire Prevention Bureau is working hard to address exterior hazards and enforce the weed abatement ordinance throughout the fire district. We added a new resource this year, which is a hand crew called Crew 12. If you're familiar with wildland firefighting, a lot of wildland firefighting happens with tools and personnel. And we now have our own fire crew within Contra Costa County Fire. So we have 12 young people that are future firefighters that are trained up to be able to fight wildland fire with hand tools. And they're led by 2 of our fire captains. And that is a huge improvement and a great resource for us to have to better respond to wildland fires. Crew 12 is also involved in prevention and mitigation of wildland fuels. So they go out and perform abatement work throughout the county to address those things when they're not assigned to fires. We also participated in the North Orinda Shaded Fuel Break Fuels Management Project, which basically runs all the way from Pleasant Hill Road in Lafayette all the way up to Inspiration Point. And that is a project that basically helps to protect the whole Highway 24 corridor from fire spreading from the northeast to the south, and provides an opportunity for firefighters to be able to hold fires that are moving from, say, the Briones Valley towards Moraga, towards Orinda or Lafayette. We also participate in the county OES system of pre-positioning apparatus. That was one of the things that led to effective responses on October 27th. So we essentially apply for a short-term grant, and we staff additional fire chiefs, fire engines, bulldozers, hand crews, water tenders when we are confronting critical fire weather to be able to more effectively respond to incidents, which we utilize the pre-position program multiple times in the last 2 years, and it's led to very successful fire responses when we were confronting higher hazards of wildland fires. We also have developed, in coordination with the Sheriff's Department, a wildland fire preparation guide and evacuation guide. I kind of took off of Supervisor Joya's earlier input, and I put that into the chat. So if you look at the chat, there's a link to our website and that guide. It's very important information that everyone can use to prepare for wildland fire and prepare for evacuations. During the 27th, we exercised a system to recall all of our personnel. That worked very well, and we've been refining that system, so we have a much better system to be able to notify off-duty personnel to respond back to the fire district to assist us in case of disasters. In terms of resources, we recently reopened Fire Station 16 in Lafayette, and as I was telling you, we're rebuilding in the new Fire Station 70 in San Pablo. We've added multiple apparatus to our fleet. We have 2 smaller Type 6 wildland fire engines that are assigned out in East County. We purchased 2 2,000-gallon water tenders, which assist us in rural fire response and also supporting units on vegetation fires. We have purchased a second bulldozer, so now we have better reliability of our fire bulldozer response during fire season. And we have upgraded many of our reserve apparatus after the incident on the 27th of October to make sure that we can have apparatus that are ready to go to be able to be staffed by firefighters coming in case of a disaster. Our latest joint partnership has been with Reach Medical Helicopter. We went into a partnership with Reach to basically bring 2 helicopters back to Contra Costa County to improve our EMS response, but we saw an opportunity to work with Reach to also be able to provide fire rescue and emergency medical services. So by the end of summer, one of the 2 helicopters that's assigned at Buchanan already has one of our fire captain paramedics on the helicopter, along with a flight nurse and a pilot. And we're going to cross-utilize that helicopter to be able to respond to wildland fires and drop water on incidents from the helicopter. And we're also going to be able to perform aerial rescues from that platform. The benefit for the public is that this is a public-private partnership that holds down the costs of that type of response and takes advantage of us working with Reach to not only respond to emergency medical services calls, but also be able to respond to fire and rescue calls. We've also recently acquired additional portable radios, so when we staff up, we have adequate communications for all personnel. We're also leaning towards technology. One of the biggest improvements we've seen as of late is the Alert Wildfire camera system throughout the state of California. And what that is basically on all the repeater sites throughout Contra Costa County, they've installed high definition cameras that can be monitored at all times. And if there's any sign of a wildland fire, we can respond to that wildland fire quicker. We can also gain incredible situational awareness on what the fire is doing and be able to add additional resources to fires quicker based on that information. So that is a great enhancement. Other situational awareness tools we're working on with different agencies is early detection systems that would detect wildland fires quicker, so we would have a quicker response. We've also been working very closely with the community warning system to improve our ability to perform evacuations and notify the public as soon as possible. We're actually getting ready to execute on a grant program to improve the system that we use to be able to not only identify an evacuation area, but coordinate the response between law enforcement and fire, and also the community warning system to more effectively identify evacuation areas and communicate that back to the public. So we can't do this without you. So I hope you have a chance to look at our preparedness guides. Please sign up for the community warning system. Prepare your home and property for a wildland fire. The preparedness guide kind of takes you through step by step. Take the next few days off to improve your property. It's just too hot and it's too dry. So if you're doing any type of mitigations around your home, all of that work should be done before 10 o'clock in the morning, and please take the next 8 days or so off and let temperatures return to an appropriate level before you go out there and do any mitigations. Develop a family evacuation plan. Make sure you have a go bag. Stay informed and really look out for your neighbors. I know that I always think about my neighbors in my neighborhood, and it's just a good thing to watch out for those that need maybe a little more help. Prepare for those public safety power shutoffs. There's information available at our website and also at the Sheriff's Department Office of Emergency Services. So that concludes my presentation. I really appreciate your attention, and I'm happy to take any questions you might have.
Can we turn off the share screen?
Yeah, you got it.
Can I acknowledge that this is the second night in a row that Chief Getch made this presentation? So he did last night at the El Sobrante MAC, equally as good, and tonight. So I just want to acknowledge that.
Well, this is a wonderful presentation, so comprehensive, and all the improvements are really good to hear. Thank you. Are there any questions or comments from the council members? Okay, any neighbor questions?
Can I make one comment?
Absolutely.
So one of the things that our office has been coordinating are, we've heard from a number of residents along the Wildcat Canyon interface, residents from Kensington, El Cerrito, Richmond, El Sobrante, East Richmond Heights. And we're going to set another meeting up, some regular meetings with all the fire chiefs, including the East Bay Regional Park District Fire Chief, and Chief Brochard from Con Fire has been participating, to have discussion and hear directly from representatives of communities. And I know we have some East Richmond Heights residents who are participating. I know John Sargent has, trying to think who else from East Richmond. John left. And so we're having a meeting coming up, but it's about bringing together all the communities along the East Bay Hills and Contra Costa Wildcat Canyon interface to sort of also talk to the park districts since they do the vegetation control issues there.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments from anyone? Laura?
Hi. That was an amazing presentation, by the way. Thank you so much. I loved it.
Oh, you're welcome.
Thank you. So I had two questions, I guess. One is about the community warning system. I know a lot of people are on Nextdoor, and I don't know if that's integrated in your community warning system, if there's a way to do that, because I know I get a lot of my warnings from Nextdoor. It gets pushed to my phone as well as the Nixle. And then the second question was, so the fireworks situation this year was a little out of control, as we all know. Did that impact the fire situation? And obviously I'd love to have something done about that in the future. I don't know how that's done, but so those two things.
Okay, so answer your first question is that's a really good one about connecting the community warning system and Nextdoor. I'll reach out to OES and I'll get an answer to James so we can get an answer to you directly. But really we need everyone's help to communicate to everyone that they're around, family, friends, church, to get the word out that everyone needs to register on the community warning system. It is very easy to do. And I was just looking at some numbers tonight about how many people in the city of in the city of El Cerrito have registered to CWS. And I think everybody in this call would be shocked, as I am, that there's only 1,400 homes that have registered. And I'm not picking on El Cerrito because I'm sure that the numbers are probably not as good throughout our communities. So we really need to communicate the importance of registering on the community warning system. And I will reach out to them and find out if we can push information to Nextdoor, or at least be able to get the word out on Nextdoor that it's important to register for CWS. Answer your second question. So go ahead.
I was going to say, if we could get links to all of the available brochures on Nextdoor too, the links to those look great.
Absolutely, and all those links can be shared. So please copy, paste, share it on Nextdoor. We want to get the word out any way that we can. I've been in this county for 20 years. This year was the worst year for fireworks than I've ever experienced. We thank God, were very well prepared for 4th of July. Chief Burchard actually called back all chief officers. So all of us were on duty on the 4th of July, including many of our firefighters. We upstaffed multiple additional units. We had a coordinated incident action plan. We coordinated with every agency and every fire department in the county, and we were still absolutely overrun with calls. And I'm just glad that the conditions were not worse. I'm glad that the fires that started weren't in worse locations, because literally we have plans for responding to fires. We had to go to the plan where we were sending one fire engine to every reported fire. And in some cases, we were pending calls, meaning that we had calls that had to be responded to later. Generally, immediately, when we're notified of a fire, you don't get one fire engine, you sometimes get 5. It just depends on the situation. So my point is, as a community, we need to address this. We did the best we could to reach out beforehand to educate the public that all fireworks in Contra Costa County are illegal. And we did a press conference with all of our law enforcement partners, the police chiefs, the sheriff. Everyone came together to try to educate, to make sure everyone knew that fireworks are dangerous and fireworks are illegal in Contra Costa County. I'm the eternal optimist. I hope that some of that message got through, and that's why it wasn't worse. But ultimately, it was absolutely, I've worked every 4th of July since I was 18. And I'm telling you, it was the worst 4th of July I have ever seen. So I know that there is an effort afoot to try to reach out to legislators, to work with Supervisor Joya, his office, just to see if there's anything that we can do to more effectively address the hazards that occur on 4th of July.
Can I just say one thing really quickly, which is, I know a lot of them are illegally coming in from out of state. I think they buy a lot of them at Battle Mountain, Nevada. So I don't know if there's a way to stop the influx. Like if I know the FBI tries to, I don't know, it's just something, if we could just stop them coming in somehow, that might be it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, there's got to be a lot of different strategies to address this, because literally I was responding from call to call to call, and just driving through the streets, it looked like a professional fireworks shoot in the middle of the street. And I'm like wondering, where do people get this? And that's definitely got to be part of the strategy to address it, is address it at the source.
I have a question.
Sure.
Hi, Victoria Curtis. First of all, I do know a lot of people who buy illegal fireworks from San Francisco Chinatown, so I know they're coming in. But the question I have, Lon, is I live on Claremont, and around the corner on Carquinez, there's some water storage containers, and I was wondering, do they have transfer pumps on those, because they're going to have to pump uphill if there's a fire above Carquinez?
I'm not familiar with specifically what you're talking about, so I'd have to educate myself a little bit on it.
Yeah, some kind of pumping station that's on Carquinez, kind of just north of Barrett.
Understood. So I don't know if that's part of the public water system to fill the tanks up above and then gravity feed down.
Mm-hmm.
the homes, but all of our fire apparatus are designed to be able to do what's called draft, which means we can take water from a static source and be able to pump it up hills. And we train on utilizing multiple fire apparatus to move water uphill if we need to. But I'll take a little closer look into what is going on there and make sure that we're aware of it. And
I'm asking this question because specifically in our last meeting, we were discussing, you know, with all the winds and the power going out, if the power should go out and there's a fire, are they still able to pump uphill?
Oh, that's a great question. So they make plans for the public safety power shutoffs. So all the water pumps in the municipal systems are provided with backup generator power, and they are prepared for those types of contingencies. So if we were to have, let's say it wasn't a public safety power shutoff, let's say it was an earthquake, they have backup systems with generators that are designed to provide water uphill. Most water systems are what they call a combination system, which means that they basically pump water uphill and then gravity feed it to your home. So when they have to pump that water uphill and they lose power, they have auxiliary generators at those sites to be able to address, you know, when they lose power and need to pump water uphill.
Great. Thank you so much.
And Victoria, I believe that pumping station that you're talking about, this is James Lyons, Victoria. I believe that pumping station is East Bay Mud. John Sargent, who was on earlier, asked this question to East Bay Mud probably a year and a half ago. And at the time, they were, as Chief Gage just said, fixing the pumping stations with generators and preparing as it related to the PSPS. So, Victoria, if you email me that intersection, I can check with East Bay Mud to verify if that pumping station is ours. Chief Gage, I'll grab that one.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment? I posted in the chat the link to register your cell phones into the community warning system. Right now, the community warning system automatically uses the reverse 911 directory to call landlines, but as we all know, we all have cell phones. So until there's an automatic way to reach cell phones, you can register your cell phone on the link that I provided through the Sheriff's OES and get your cell phone registered in the community warning system. I really highly recommend that.
Supervisor Joya, could I add one more thing about that?
Yeah.
Something that maybe everybody doesn't know that I think is really important is that when you register your cell phone, they can actually push information by text faster than phone. So it's a way to take advantage of technology to get earlier warning in case of a situation.
That's right. You know, and one comment on those pumping plants, which has remained a major issue. You know, I was on the East Bay Mud Board back in the 1990s, and I was on during the Oakland Hills fire. And I remember very well what happened there. It was up in the fire regions in the Oakland Hills when the power went out. And if you think about how these storage reservoirs work, water is pumped uphill to this storage reservoir, and then it serves the neighborhood by gravity feed. So when the water was out fighting the fires, when it ran out and there was no power, there was no ability to pump water back into the tanks in order to serve the community by gravity. And one of the things I know we did at that time when I was on the board, East Bay Mud did put a plan into effect to have standby generators at their major pumping plants in the hills, so that if power went out and there was a fire, they would be able to pump water back up in the hills. So I know there's been some reservoirs so East Bay Mud has been working on and is aware of that. And what I've been informed, at least by PG&E, is that during these public safety power shutoffs, if there's not a fire, that even if power goes out, there's usually enough you're not using all the water in the tank. It's the fire demand that causes it to drain quickly. So, but a concern would be if there's a fire during a public safety power shut off. And I think as a result of that, East Bay Mud's been expanding where it puts its standby generators, so that this combination of the power shutoffs, wildfire, as the chief has said, is really a dangerous combination. But that's why I know East Bay Mud has been working on really making sure there's backup power to replace those tanks.
Any other questions or comments? Okay. Thank you, Chief Gutch, for that wonderful, amazing, comprehensive report. Not only the report, but I just can't imagine all the work behind that report that went into all of those improvements and alert brochures and everything. That's wonderful. Thank you.
You're welcome. We're proud to serve, and it was nice spending some time with you tonight.
Thank you.
Thanks for the 2 nights in a row, Lon.
Thank you, Chief.
You are more than welcome.
Okay, so next on our agenda is public comment. So any comment on items that is not on the agenda? Joanna, we have to unmute you. Unmute yourself.
Okay. I have a couple of items. I would like to, I made the notes back on the first page of my notes. Now I have to find those. But as far as the most recent issue, I would like to remind the MAC that I brought up at a meeting several meetings ago, that I think we should attempt in our fire preparedness work to have some kind of joint effort with all the schools on the hillside in East Richmond Heights to have them all share their emergency evacuation plan, their plan for, if a fire is coming towards their schools. So we understand how schools are going to evacuate, how parents are going to get their kids, because the worst thing that could possibly happen is to have a bunch of panicked parents clog up all the streets so that the fire apparatus can't do their jobs. So I know it's kind of strange now because the schools, the kids and the parents aren't here, but I want us to have it. I want us to not lose track of that. I would also like, as public comment, to suggest that if there's another MAC meeting before the November election, that we invite school board candidates to speak.
There is, well, we have another scheduled meeting in October, and I assume maybe we'll be back on schedule now. It's October 20th, so I think that would work.
Okay, good. And I just want to announce that Open Door is going to have a blessing of the animals, a different version than we've had in the past. It'll be October 4th, I believe. So it's people like to get their pets blessed, and we're going to figure out a way to still do that. We're not meeting at the church, and we probably won't meet on the site until sometime in 2021.
Our pets need all the blessings they can get.
Yes, yes.
Okay, Mike, can you unmute your?
Can't hear you.
Sorry, we can't.
You're not unmuted. Can you do that, James, from your?
There we go.
I got it. I was trying to catch the bottom corner, and that just didn't work. And in that meeting before the election, I hope that we'll have some information about Prop 15, the Schools and Community Initiative, and the extreme importance of that, along with, the school board. I saw at least 2 school board candidates, Leslie Reckler and Yanad was also on before. Maybe we can hear from them in terms of how they hope to impact the neighborhood. And then the other thing that I think in terms of, a marriage with what's going on in the schools that's so important is recently the school board voted to not allow the Mandarin school to come to Adams. And I hope that people are aware of that. But there was a second little part in that motion that was passed, and that was that they want to spend the money on a study to figure out what to do with the Adams site. Now, I was living up there all through, when Adams was open, Adams closed, and I had kids going to Adams. I was part of the group that wrote a plan for what to do with the Adams site, and that's now 4 or 5 years old. But that's the county property, and we know that something must be done. And I'm an advocate for the education village, and there are very few people that I saw tonight that were part of all of those activities. But I hope that we'll bring it back up again, particularly if we can come up with a plan that will improve the neighborhood and benefit the school district either financially, plus in the recruitment of teachers. So there's a whole lot of areas where I hope that we can start looking at all those municipalities that the chief was talking about, all those intersecting municipalities up there where we live. I was at 6076 Arlington. I was at Arlington and Solano for many, many years. And it's such a beautiful neighborhood, such a beautiful area. I'm glad that we now have a MAC. This is my first MAC meeting. I do go to the neighborhood council. I'm on Carlston now, which is part of the neighborhood council, but it's in the city of Richmond. So anyway, that's I've sort of introduced myself, and that's the other piece. If we were all sitting in my backyard, we would get to know each other a little bit better. I don't know how to affect agenda or what your protocols are. So I hope you'll let us know what to do to get items agendized, Joanne, or what we can do so that we get to know each other a little bit better.
I certainly think that calling Supervisor Joya's office and speaking with James would help to get things agendized. And as you see on our agenda, one of the last things on our agenda is always, what do you want to hear about on the next agenda? So we'll be sure to include all the things that have come up already, and please add some more when we get to that item if you like. Welcome to our meeting.
Thank you.
Come for more. And hopefully someday we'll be in person. So,
Leslie?
Hello to everybody. My name is Leslie Reckler, and it's nice to meet everyone. And first, I want to thank and congratulate your treasurer on the best treasurer report I've ever heard in my entire life. I would like to borrow your treasurer, do some training for the groups I work with, so thank you for that. There was some reference that I am running for the school board, and I wanted to meet you. I'm a 20-year Kensington resident. I have children enrolled in and graduated from West Contra Costa schools, but I also have a very, very long track record of advocacy in the district. Supervisor Joya knows me since 2006 when I made him change all the signs in our neighborhood and change all the street patterns so that our kids didn't get run over on their way to school.
I remember that.
What?
I remember that, Leslie.
Can't forget it. And I'd like to thank all of you for your support of our schools. I have been really motivated by school funding, and I've worked on 10 of our school funding measures, passing 8, and have really contributed time and effort to raising $2 billion for our schools for facilities and programs. So I thank you very much for that. I've worked with youth all my life. I'm a Richmond Promise mentor. I started a writing college essay program at El Cerrito High School so that the kids can get their essays written. And I'm running because we need more parent perspective on this board. We have invaluable firsthand experience, and we need to get it out there. A lot of times what the board picks as priorities and what parents want, they're not aligning. Only board member Phillips has children enrolled in our schools. My priorities are to deliver excellent, equitable education right now in the age of COVID. I want to keep us out of bankruptcy. We're very fiscally troubled right now. I do have a very deep business background, 20 years of experience running very complex $100 million budgets, so I get school funding. And I want to innovate our teaching and learning practices because I want kids to want to show up for school and love it. I've been endorsed by a really diverse coalition of local leaders. The United Teachers of Richmond, which I'm honored, that's the organization that supports all of our teachers. It's their labor union, voted to endorse me. I'm honored by that. I have been endorsed by Richmond Mayor Tom Butt, El Cerrito City Council members Janet Abelson and Rochelle Perdue-Okimoto, who's a parent, and board member Consuelo Lara. I would love to get you all to know you better, and I'd like you to get to know me better. My website is Leslie for WCCUSD, and as many of these people on the call know me, I will definitely call you back, so thank you.
Hey, Leslie, thank you for coming to our meeting. Any other public
I have a
comment?
quick question. Victoria again. Okay, John, several of my clients, I'm a realtor, and several of my clients have asked me why we still have that bond on our taxes for the doctor's hospital, which was shut down and sold to the casino. So how does that work? If a bond was passed, we continue paying it every year, even though we don't have a hospital?
Sure. So, of course, the West Contra Costa Healthcare District, as you know, the hospital closed, the district still exists. So there are two ways that people pay taxes to that district. Part of your 1% ad valorem goes toward the hospital, goes toward that district. So that's part of your 1%. And then, as you may recall, there were two parcel taxes that passed. One back in 2004, I believe it was. That's the one you're referring to, which is $52 a year. I got involved with the hospital district through the county in 2006. So I had nothing to do with that measure in 2004, but I'll give you some background. So in 2006, when the county became involved and provided funding to keep the hospital open, and we helped keep it open for 10 years, and it was just unsustainable, we did pass a second measure for $48 a year. So when I was involved with the second measure, and when we put the second measure together, which was $48, we put a provision in there that said if the hospital closes, that that parcel tax would go away. So when the hospital closed, that second parcel tax that I think passed sometime around 2016, 2014, in that range, went away. So the healthcare board that existed in 2004 did not put such a provision in that measure. What that money was used for, however, it was used back in 2004 to obtain bonds for operating costs to keep the hospital open. So those bonds are still being paid off. The Board of Supervisors now serves as the board of the healthcare district under a state law. And the committee of Supervisor Glover and myself are the committee because our districts include that district. Right now, the revenue that comes into that healthcare district is the ad valorem taxes you pay, which is about, I think it comes out to about $3 million a year in your 1% ad valorem. And then the $52 a year, which raises, I think, somewhere between $5 and $6 million a year. Much of that is paying off the previous obligations of the hospital and the healthcare district. Some of it, whatever, and over time, as that money is freed up, it will get used for healthcare in West Contra Costa County. So there was a small amount of money last year that became available, and it was used for two purposes. Lifelong Medical, which is a medical clinic located in San Pablo and Pinole that provides urgent care services. And the money is being used to support some increased urgent care services and to ramp that up in Pinole, where they have a clinic. So the money, and the other amount was used at a youth center in Richmond for youth healthcare services for young people. It wasn't a lot of money. So most of this $5 to $6 million is I think most of that actually is right now paying off obligations. It's part of the $3 million that's also paying off obligations. What's left is gone to support urgent care services in West Contra Costa and healthcare for youth. So it's going to be a number of years before that bond is paid off. I can tell you that any funds that are left over are dedicated and have to be spent for healthcare in West Contra Costa. So while it's not for a hospital, it is for healthcare services that are providing benefit and services to West County residents.
Thank you. That'll give me an explanation with my clients. Thanks.
Good. And by the way, I think it's important to note that the 1% had the hospital district disbanded, and it really can't until these bonds are paid off. But frankly, what we wanted to do was preserve healthcare funding for West Contra Costa, because if that 1%, which is at $3 million, if the district were disbanded, that small $3 million would get spread out throughout the county to every single taxing agency, each one of the 19 cities and all the special districts, and we would have lost those $3 million for healthcare in West Contra Costa. The parcel tax, as I say, when that's paid off, that will also get used for healthcare in West Contra Costa.
Okay, thank you.
A long
Any more public comments? The next item on the agenda is discussion items. So this is development plan applications, variance reports, building modification requests, appeals, etc., received in the previous months from the Contra Costa County Conservation Development Department and notice of public hearings. No items to consider, but I just have a question because it's been a while since we've met, and we typically have several land use items, and I think we had some pending before we went into COVID, and I think a lot of people are using this time to get some things done on their home. So I'm just wondering, has it slowed down?
None have been sent.
None have been sent. Okay, so okay.
James, given the public health order, is planning and permitting in Martinez, are they still open full hours? I mean, have there been any limits on?
They are open. I'd have to go to their website to give you the exact hours, but they are still permitting applications. Construction work is one of the things that you may know that is allowed under. So they are still issuing permits for some work to be done.
Okay, and there's no.
Just go ahead, John.
Since you're on this item, one thing I was going to suggest, and James is aware of this, we have gotten some inquiries into our office from some residents in East Richmond Heights that want to explore whether to do a view ordinance like we have in Kensington. So I would suggest that maybe we put this on your agenda for your next meeting. I think the MAC should be involved in this discussion. These residents, and we can talk more about what standards currently apply in East Richmond and how they would change if we went to a Kensington type ordinance, which our office developed with the Kensington community about 15 years ago. It specifically does provide protection for views and light and air, which currently are not protected in the existing ordinance. And it was unique in Kensington because, right, it's a hillside, a slope, and when somebody added onto their house, it had the potential to block someone's view. That exists in parts of East Richmond, not in all. It's a little more flat, but it does occur. So we can, if you put this on, we can at least begin to introduce this issue, let the residents know, and we can talk about that.
Great. And maybe you could put a link to the to the actual Kensington ordinance so we can look at that in advance of the meeting.
So we'll do that. So James, I'll send you, we'll just flag that for an agenda item for the next meeting, whenever you meet.
Okay. No information items, no subcommittee reports. Any announcements? There is on our agenda, the East Richmond Heights MAC has 2 alternate seat vacancies to Supervisor Joya or James, are you looking, or is that out there to?
We'll publicize it some more. We'll do some publicizing for it. This is for, I think the seats are, yeah, they're alternate seats, right?
Yes, they're both of them are alternate.
So yeah, we can do it. Of course, there's new people on tonight. If they're interested, contact James in my office, send an email, and we can get those applications available.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is agenda items and speakers for the upcoming MAC meeting. And we already have the view ordinance, maybe a short update on what's going on with Adams, Prop 15, and school board applicants that were running for the school board. And I have on my calendar Tuesday, October 20th as our next meeting.
That sounds right.
Okay.
I don't have it up, but that sounds right.
Are there any other items that people would like? It sounds like a pretty full agenda already, but let's get them out there and we could move them to
the Adams report. School district.
If I could just make one clarification on that Adams, they voted at the last meeting to spend $8,000 to look at taking apart parts of that building, not all of it, but that was the scope, was to look at perhaps making a few pieces of it disappear. Thank you.
And so I'm clear, what are we asking as it relates to Adams? I'm not quite sure who to ask to provide this update. So I go ahead, Joanna.
I think you should contact somebody in the facilities department, and they might be able to put together a little slideshow or something for you. Luis Fries is the head of that facilities department, and I think they should give you guys an update of what's up with Sarah School and the Mandarin School, and where they are with the $8,000 they're spending on a study to see what it takes to demo the building. And maybe they should go, he could go back and present the slideshow that the consultant presented at the end of the last process. Wasn't it, Mike Peretz, wasn't it at the end of the process that the consultant came in and said, here's where you should build and all that stuff?
Yes and no, but a little bit of that, yes.
So Joanna, email that to me. I'm trying to copy everything down, but if you email that to me, and I don't know who Luis, I'm not familiar with the district that well. So if you have a phone number or email address for him, please include that. I'm happy to reach out to him and ask for someone to participate in our October meeting.
Okay.
Now I want to ask, is the demolition, is there an initial study for the demolition? Does it require any kind of environmental review or EIR or anything? I do have concerns about.
Well, that's the $8,000 was just to set aside a little bit of money to make a study of what it would take to demolish the building.
Okay, and, well, I do hope they address the environmental impact in the initial study.
Well, and it's not the whole building. I guess part of that wall holds up the mountain, so they don't want to take that down. But that's the.
Well, and if I could, I've attended almost every single school board meeting in the last 3 years. It's really not on school board members' radar. They're not even clear, and this has happened on several different versions of the board. They're not even clear where the line is and what's unincorporated and what's city of Richmond. So I think, that you should assume that the school district needs help understanding our neighborhood. So, and ask whoever presents to be sure they bring some maps and, so it's clear because, Joanne, your question of like, does it trigger some kind of environmental review? Well, I think we need to be our own advocates for that, like, okay, what are the county's rules about environmental reviews for demolitions of massive 50-year-old buildings, so.
And it might, somebody needs to look in the cultural resource evaluation for that building too. It's done by a really well-known architect and it may have some significance. Not that I want to save it, but that needs to be looked at and it needs to be mitigated or documented, perhaps. Somebody needs to look at the cultural resource evaluation for the building as a historic resource.
Yeah, and just to comment on that, I know that I've been in contact over the years, and this is with multiple superintendents and school board members on issues related, I know, and with capital facilities folks. And so I'm aware, at least there were people there that understood that it was all in the unincorporated area. I know there's a new capital facilities person there now. I haven't spoken to them. And if that site were developed into a non-school site, it would need permit approvals through the county, land use approvals, because it's in the unincorporated area. If it continues to be a school site, the law is different. There's state law issues, right? Not county land use issues. And so it depends what project is proposed for that site. School site may not require under state law local land use approval, but it's worth to understand what's happening there. So it sounds like, hearing from capital facilities, I am unaware of anything new that out there, unless there's been discussion at the school board. They haven't contacted us or the county on any land use issues.
Any other thing to add to our next agenda or a future agenda that we might want to get on the list? Because we do have a running list. Yes, Joanna.
Joanne, so we might want to, could you reach out to Urban Tilth to ask them for an update on their Crestmont farm, or Adams Crest Farm, is what it's called. It's gone fallow as far as I can tell. And I know the farm manager actually unfortunately passed away earlier this year, not from COVID, I don't think, but maybe to find out their plans, because I see them as a community resource. And as these discussions come up about what to do with the school's property, that seems to be a very creative community serving purpose, but it would be good to hear from them directly what their hopes are for their work there in the future.
Will do.
I can do that because I know that I know them.
Maybe to save the time, you can get a report. We work with them. We've provided them 3 acres of land and $1 million of funding to build a urban farm in North Richmond. That's a project we're working on with them, and we're actually in the process of transferring the land to them. So I talk to Doria a lot.
Yeah.
I know they've been totally overwhelmed and busy with everything they're doing. I haven't heard what they're doing. I can easily just ask Doria, what are you doing, and we can get you a report and have them come. I'm not sure what they are doing on the site, if anything. I know they've been focusing their efforts on a lot of the work they do. I actually hadn't heard that you're saying that it's fallow right now.
Yeah, they stopped working it several months ago. Yeah, and I didn't know why. I haven't talked to Doria in a long time.
Yeah.
So.
Well,
she's had some she's had some health issues among relatives. She's had some relatives die, one of COVID, so she's been dealing with a lot.
Mm-hmm. And then finally, Joanne, I just think it might be good to invite the Mandarin School back. I know you've had Mr. Peterson, the principal, present before, but I think an update would be very helpful, because as I see it, it was the needs of that growing successful school and their request for more space that sort of triggered the whole Adams, discussion. So
specific, when I ask him for an update as to, it sounds like they're not going to be at the.
Well, they need more space, and he could just tell us how they're growing and how they're doing their online distance learning and what they're hoping for with space and why they want to stay in East Richmond Heights. And,
I mean, there's an issue of how many items you can deal with on one agenda. You may want to just think about having.
They're not going to all be on the next agenda. I want the information so when I make the agenda later, I don't forget.
What we've done in the past, and you probably have a list a mile long already, James, of items we've requested. We can only, you're right, that's why I said we can only take so many for each agenda, but then they can get bumped. And hopefully you have a running list, James, and maybe we could have the running list to it, just attached to our next agenda, so we can see what we're waiting on and what we've asked for, just to keep track.
maybe getting an update from the school district on all, quote, school district related issues around that site, whether it's the Mandarin School or Adams, could be a good way to handle it, where you have one presentation by the school district to cover any school district related issues in one presentation. And we could work to identify the right person and who that is.
Okay. Okay. Well, I think that sums it up. Great meeting. Good to be back and have a meeting. It's been a while. Thank you all for coming. And our next meeting is October 20th. Please come again and invite others, okay? And thank you, Supervisor Joya, for being at our meeting. It's great to have you there to answer all these questions. And thank you for taking the time.
Scout appreciates it too.
Okay, do I need is there a motion to adjourn?
I motion that we adjourn.
Second.
All in favor? Aye.
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 Thank you.
Good evening.
Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.